Hello and welcome to Into Vietnam here on VITV. It's July the 17th and let's take a look at top stories of the day. Most local banks said lending interest rate in Vietnam dong will decrease slightly. Vietnam can hardly achieve the 5.8% growth target. And $20 billion is expected from the second M&A stage in Vietnam. First and foremost in the news is some information from the banking sector.
More than 70% of credit organizations predict that both deposit and lending interest rates in Vietnam dong this year will reduce by 1.24% and 1.43% a year, respectively, in comparison with the levels at the end of 2013. According to a survey conducted by the Monetary Statistics and Forecast Department under the State Bank of Vietnam from May the 20th to June the 9th, 90% of credit organizations expect their mobilized capital and loans outstanding balance will grow by 3.4 to 3.6% in the third quarter and 14.2% for the entire 2014. Over 90% of the organizations also believe their liquidity will remain stable or improve in the second half of the year, while 80% of them think the bad debts or outstanding loan ratio remains stable or decreases slightly in the second and third quarters. Meanwhile, around two-thirds expect an improvement in their business in the third quarter and the whole year, and a recovery in customer demand for banking products and services. The State Bank of Vietnam has announced that it has started buying the US dollars for an additional 100 Vietnam dong as of July the 16th. Accordingly, the central bank increased the dollar's buying rate from 21,100 dong, which was remained for the last 1 year, to 21,200 dong. On its website, the central bank kept the US dollar's exchange rate at 21,246, unchanged from its new rate since June the 19th. The central bank also set the selling price for a dollar at 21,458.5 dong, which commercial banks were allowed to apply as an effective exchange rate within 1% margin. Last week, the central bank released the preliminary report on the currency market during the first 6 months. The report said that after the new rate was applied on June the 19th, the forex rate has stabilized and the market liquidity has been stable.
Standard & Poor's Rating Services has cautioned that Vietnamese banks are facing heightened asset quality risk as companies find it difficult to repay loans in a slowing economy, with some segments faring worse than others. In its report, S&P said that bad debts could erode Vietnamese banks' capitalization and profitability over the next 12 to 18 months. This was because banks' non-performing loans continue to rise as local companies, which are the main recipients of bank credit, are affected from slow sales, high inventory and weak cash flows. However, the report noted that the government intends to adopt more stringent standards, clean up bad loans. The S&P report acknowledged that the government's macroeconomic stabilization measures have begun to yield some results. Vietnam's macroeconomic is generally stable, but it can hardly realize the set growth target of 5.8% this year. The biggest obstacle to the economy in the second half of the year are sluggish domestic consumption power and the unequal development between FDI and local firms. These are comments by top experts at the conference Vietnam's Economy in the first half of 2014 and New Challenges, held by the National Congress Economic Committee, the National Economic Department and the University of Economics in Hanoi on July the 16th. He said at the event, Vietnam's economy in the first half continued to be stabilized. Economic growth was recovered, though at lower pace. Inflation was curbed, and exports remained a bright spot in the economy. Nonetheless, Vietnam faces a number of challenges, including imbalanced development of economic sectors and heavy reliance on foreign resources. Moreover, domestic growth stimulus is waning, social investments stay low, while state budget deficit was high.
Và đặc biệt là bội chi hàng năm trong nhiều năm vừa rồi, 3 năm vừa rồi là bội chi ngày càng lớn, và cụ thể là tháng 11 năm ngoái từ 4,8 lên 5,3 cho năm 2013 và năm 2014. Đấy, khi mà bội chi vẫn cao rồi nhưng cái vay nợ lại lớn nữa.
Theo tôi nghĩ là cần phải tăng cái chi về đầu tư từ ngân sách nhà nước, còn đối với chi thường xuyên thì nên cắt giảm đi, bởi vì chi đầu tư thì có xu hướng ngày càng giảm trong tổng chi, nhưng mà cái đầu tư từ ngân sách nhà nước so với tổng đầu tư của cả nền kinh tế thì lại gần như không có sự thay đổi.
Apart from low domestic demand, tensions on the East Seas is another obstacle that Vietnam will face in the last 6 months, as China is the fourth largest exporting market of the country and also the biggest raw material import country. In one word, Vietnam can hardly achieve the growth target of 5.8%.
Để đạt được cái mục tiêu là 5,8%, thì cái tốc độ tăng trưởng kinh tế 6 tháng cuối năm của chúng ta phải ở mức khoảng 6,3%. Thì chúng tôi cho rằng đây là một thách thức khá lớn. Thì tăng trưởng kinh tế của chúng ta với cái diễn biến hiện tại sẽ đạt được ở mức khoảng 5,3 đến 5,4%, và lạm phát thì ở mức 6,3 đến mức 6,4%.
To boost economic development in the coming months, Vietnam should loosen its monetary and fiscal policies, whose room for loosening is still big, as the state budget deficit was equivalent to 32% of the whole year plan. Credit growth and money supply stay low, but the country should not ignore the inflation factor.
Cuối năm thì tôi nghĩ rằng là chúng ta vẫn phải tiếp tục duy trì một cái môi trường kinh tế vĩ mô ổn định với lãi suất thấp, tỷ giá ổn định, lạm phát thấp. Đồng thời thì cũng tăng chi tiêu công của chính phủ. Tất nhiên là tất cả những cái đó thì nó cũng đòi hỏi chính phủ phải có một cái sự phối hợp khá là nhịp nhàng, bởi vì nếu mà tăng chi tiêu công thì thông thường nó cũng có thể dẫn đến cái lạm phát, mà nếu mà lạm phát tăng cao thì hiển nhiên là sẽ không giữ được lãi suất thấp.
Thì các cái giải pháp hiện nay của chính phủ cũng như là của ngân hàng nhà nước đưa ra thì là sẽ tập trung vào tháo gỡ khó khăn cho hoạt động sản xuất kinh doanh. Nhưng trong điều hành thì báo cáo với các quý vị đại biểu là ngân hàng nhà nước không bao giờ chủ quan với diễn biến của lạm phát. Thế khi mà chúng tôi mua một lượng rất lớn ngoại tệ, tức là 6 tháng đầu năm là coi như là mua khoảng trên 10 tỷ đô la Mỹ, thì đồng nghĩa với cái việc là đưa một cái lượng tiền rất là lớn vào nền kinh tế. Nhưng trong điều hành thì ngay từ đầu năm ngân hàng nhà nước đã có các cái biện pháp công cụ để hút tiền về, tức là can thiệp vô hiệu cái lượng tiền đưa ra.
Experts at the conference also recommend other measures to reduce risk to the economy. They stress that the government should prioritize domestic investment enhancement, reduce the reliance on Chinese market, boosting localization rate in manufacturing, and perfect the legal framework to boost growth. Mergers and acquisition activities in Vietnam are forecast to enter a new period of stronger development, with the total value tallying in at approximately $20 billion, 30% higher than the first stage of $15 billion. The prediction was unveiled at a recent press conference on the threshold of Vietnam M&A Forum 2014, scheduled for August. According to analysts from M&A Forum's research group, the country's first stage of M&A deals reached $15 billion for 2008-2013, with a high record of $5 billion in 2013. The second M&A stage in 2014 to 2018 is expected to see higher growth in value and the number of M&A deals thanks to economic recovery and improvements in enterprise restructuring and approval of legal documents. The research group said some sectors like banking, production and real estate are predicted to undertake big M&A deals. Hanoi People's Committee has decided to issue 3 trillion dong municipal bonds to invest in some keywords of the city. The bonds have par value of 100,000 dong with terms of 3 years, 5 and 10 years, and the HPC is the issuer. The HBC assigned the Hanoi State Treasury Department, in collaboration with the Hanoi Stock Exchange, to be in charge of issuance and payment. The bond interest rates are fixed throughout the terms based on the interest rate frame specified by the Ministry of Finance and the market situation at the time of issuance, but not lower than those of government bonds. Regarding payment methods, the bonds will be issued by two methods: bidding through the Hanoi Stock Exchange and underwriting through securities firms, commercial banks, and financial institutions. Vietnam Airlines to spend big on aircraft expansion, where the VNG joins global list of $1 billion tech firms, and here are the details.
Vietnam Airlines Corporation will need nearly 70 trillion Vietnam đồng, or more than $3.3 billion for 2014-2018, including nearly 63.3 trillion Vietnam đồng spent on aircraft purchases. The spending on aircraft is part of the business plan which Vietnam Airlines has mapped out for the years after the state-owned corporation goes public. To have finances for new aircraft, Vietnam Airlines under the Ministry of Transport has plans to increase its gesture capital to 26.32 trillion Vietnam đồng in 2018 from more than 14.1 trillion Vietnam đồng this year by selling shares to investors or its shareholders after equitization this year as scheduled. Vietnam Airlines aims to sell 25% of its gesture capital to investors at the IPO this year. Later, the state holding as its corporation will be gradually reduced to 65%. VNG, the provider of online games and related services, is valued at $1 billion by market research firm World Startup Report. It is announced in the firm's recent report on the biggest internet companies in 50 markets with homegrown tech titans. To inspire and orient startup internet enterprises worldwide, World Startup Report has selected and examined the top 3 internet firms in each market. As a result, VNG tops Vietnam, followed by VC Corporation with $125 million and Vietnam Price Joy Stock Company with $75 million. VNG helps Vietnam into the 30th position on the chart, showing 50 markets with major homegrown tech companies.
The domestic steel sector is expected to grow just at around 10 to 12% this year, as consumption from July to December would not be high. The Vietnam Steel Association said the 3 months left in the second half of the year would fall in the rainy season. This is the reason why the industry growth would be the same as the first half of the year, with expected consumption of 1.31 million tons, increasing by 13%. The report of Vietcombank Securities Company on prospects in the second half of the year also said output of building steels in the 6-month period would rise 12.7% to 1.36 million tons in comparison with the first half of the year. And now it's time for local gold prices, forex, and stock markets. Well, our program has come to an end. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon and goodbye for now.